Hey Siva. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited about this event. We're here today to talk about winning in 2023. What a great topic. Everyone wants to win in 2023. But first, we will give folks just a few minutes to join. And while we wait, audience, go into the chat and tell us where you're calling from. We love to hear from you. Let's start here. I'm going to do a quick introduction. So we are here to talk about winning in a tough sales landscape, proven techniques for difficult environments. Let me get my slides up. With these awesome panelists, we have them both from Everstage. My name is Eduardo, and I am a community events manager at Modern Sales Pros and your host for the next hour. For those of you not familiar with Modern Sales Pros, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the questions that they would struggle to solve on their own and help them see around corners they might not know about. And we do that through with live sessions like this one you're about to experience. We have a robust online forum. We have quarterly summits, and we are starting to get back into in-person events, which is very, very exciting. If you're not a part of MSP yet, you'll be invited to join after this event. My job here today is to make sure everyone will get the most out of this event. So let's review some housekeeping notes before we jump into the content. First, this event is being recorded. You'll be able to access the recording in the MSP website later today. And second, if you have any questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A and the chat function, and we'll be sure to get to answer your questions during the event. One great thing about MSP is that we do not work alone. We have partners, and if today's event is sponsored by Everstage. I have Mike and Sivai here from Everstage. They're gonna tell you everything about winning in 2023. But for right now, I'm gonna pass the mic to Siva. He will be our moderator for today. So Siva, you can please introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about Everstage, and then you can pass the mic to Mike, and Mike can introduce himself, and then jump right into your content. I'll be watching live, but I'll be back later for some outro notes. Does that sound good?
Absolutely, Eduardo. Thanks
All
for
right.
the introduction.
I'll see you
Hey,
later.
everyone. Yeah, nice to meet you all today in this session. I'm Siva. I'm the founder and CEO of Everstage. Everstage is a leading sales commission management platform that's used by ops, finance, and sales teams to automate the entire commissions process, reduce the time, effort associated with entire commissions process, and also to drive visibility and transparency to sales teams and thereby performance, right? Everstage is the highest rated sales commission software on Gartner Peer Insights, on G2, and many other review sites. Super excited to be here. Prior to starting Everstage, I was a revenue operations professional and leader myself. And obviously, the world's changed quite a bit in the last few years. So, excited to be, participating, especially on this specific topic, and talk about it more with none other than Mike, who's I think thought leader, to talk about winning in tough sales landscape. So I'll let Mike first introduce himself before we jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Siva. Pleasure to meet everybody. Just like Siva mentioned, very excited, very honored to be speaking with all of you today and talking about this topic. Like Siva mentioned, my name is Mike Groneveld. I'm VP of Global Sales here at Everstage. I've been in SaaS, SaaS sales for 12 plus years. In leadership for 8 plus of those, and I've helped organizations and been lucky enough to be a part of organizations from 1 million to 100 million, and everything in between. And I think throughout those years and throughout that experience, definitely have some tried and true tactics that can help during tough landscapes and tough environments, and excited to share it with everybody. So appreciate you guys having me, and look forward to diving into it.
Awesome. Perfect, Mike. So I think let's kick this off right away. So, I think in some sense, we had a little bit of a slowdown in 2020 with COVID, kicking off. But really what happened in 2021, to refresh some of our memories is, I started to feel, at least, and I'm sure, some of you as well, started to feel, sales got a little bit easier. And you start to see that deals were easier to win, and there was budgets that were there, stakeholders were taking decisions faster, So everything seemed a little bit easier. But I think now, with obviously, the slowdown that we are, going through, clearly, things have, if not come back to normal, it's actually gotten even tougher, right? So I think this is a very important point where, we start to first get back to the basics, get back to some of the fundamentals that are important in enterprise sales. And so that's where we should start, right? So the first thing that I want to kind of chat about, Mike, was really what are the basics that we should go back to as sales professionals, as sales leaders. What are the things that we should go back to and really do to connect better with prospects and win revenue in this landscape?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think to your point, you come out of 2020 and then you get to 2021 and you thought you've seen the worst of it, and are we on the upturn? And just when you get comfortable with anything in life, certainly with sales, you'll get reminded that it's not as easy as maybe it has been. So I think for me, there's something that I always need to remind myself of, and to make sure that my team is aligned with. And it sounds really simple, but when you really think about it, I think everybody should ask themselves, are they doing this? And that is my sales process set up to be aligned with how my prospects want to purchase, or is it more tailored to how I want to sell it? Right. Especially when things get going really well, I think it's really easy to try to dictate how everything goes, right? And I want everything to fit in my box and follow my sales process and my playbook. When the reality is you don't matter as the seller, right? The only one that matters is the prospect and is the customer. And especially in today's day and age, with technology just running rampant and continuing to evolve, you got to be very, very focused on how does my prospect want to buy versus how am I selling it? And are those things aligned, and do I have them prioritized correctly? So I think that's number one for sure. I think something else that always comes to mind is, building rapport, but I think that's deeper than that. I think it's connecting with people, right? And doing so on a personal level. I think it's very easy for a lot of folks to do their LinkedIn research before a meeting and see where somebody lives, and talk about what the weather is there, and that doesn't really do anything, right? I think if what this day and age has taught us is that to capture somebody's attention and to genuinely connect with somebody, you got to work harder than that, right? And again, I think you can't really think or act like a salesperson. One of the things that I try to push myself and my teams to really be focused on is, how can we act like a resource where we're genuinely focused on how we help our prospects. And if you do that, I think you find you really can build the best kind of rapport that's out there, right? It's not just will we be friends outside of this? It's, can I legitimately help you? And a lot of times that trumps everything. You know what I mean? And then, like, how you actually get there, I think is kind of a mixture of two things. It's understanding needs, and then how you demonstrate value back to those needs, right? And so when I think about understanding your needs, it's, obviously some basic stuff like open-ended questions, really trying to get two-way engagement throughout your meetings and things of that nature, but also active listening, right? Really make sure that, you're not preoccupied with what you need to do during a conversation, and really make sure that you're stopping and focusing and active listening with your prospect, right? One of the things that I always try to make sure that my people are doing, and certainly that I do as well, is every time your prospect speaks or your customer speaks, how can you be using that throughout your demonstration, right? How can you be using that information? And you should really strive to, every time they talk, value that, and really, leverage it, right? One of the other things that I think is super important is, I think it's very easy for folks to be very focused on the pain points of an individual, right? What challenges are you facing, and how can I help you solve those challenges? But I think what separates a lot of folks is, how can you articulate what that means by solving those challenges, right? I know one of the things that we really help a lot of our customers with here at Everstage is, calculating commissions is a very manual process, and it takes a lot of time. And there's a lot of headache that goes into it. And we solve for that, obviously. But one of the things that I always think is really important is, what does it mean once we do help you solve that, right? What else can you free up your time to do? And I think for, in today's day and age, it's really, really important that you really tell that picture, because ultimately, especially when an efficiency move is your play, the CFO is going to go, well, what are you going to do with that efficiency, right? What are you going to do with that time I just saved? And you better have an answer for it. And so I think that is really, really important, as well as just it can help you empathize a lot deeper with your prospect by just understanding what is that second level of solving that problem. What do you get from it, right? Because if you get lucky, there's a personal gain for that individual. I can get a promotion, right? And then think about it, how much more impactful it is for you to help them do that than it is to actually solve the problem itself, right? So that's a really, really big one. And then, that second kind of part of it is demonstrating the value. So I kind of talked about this, but, once we understand how we can help an individual and how prospects and customers, what their challenges are, how can I tie that information back into my demonstration itself, right? I think one of the big things that's very easy to do is feature function show your technology, right? But that doesn't work, right? I think in today's day and age, you have to tell stories, and those stories have to be relevant to me, right, as the prospect. And so I think it's very important to invest in that. Really make sure that you're working with your reps on, hey, as we get our answers to discovery, how can we actually tie those back into what we show them and articulate that we are doing that, get confirmation that that is relevant for them. As well as, if you do that really well, you can shape your whole, sales pitch, right? And your sales story, as I like to think of it, to get ahead of potential objections that the prospect hasn't even thought of yet, right? We're the experts in what we provide, and we understand their challenges at a very deep level, because, we help customers with this all day, every day, right? And so how can you shape that story to where, you can really, get ahead of objections before they happen. And then, I'd say another point here that's super important is, I can sit here as a salesperson and talk to an individual, and there might be a good amount of weight that comes with that, right? But really, at the end of the day, third party information, social proof, I say is arguably more important and more valuable, right? I think one of the big things that I give a lot of credit to our marketing team on is, we have a great presence on G2, right? And on these different, social proof sorts of websites, and our customers, are extremely thankful that we're able to do that, and they're willing to take the time to do that. And so we really try to live that development and leverage that development as best as we can. And then I'd say the last thing of just like, techniques and things that I do to help, win revenue, is I always try to make sure that we're mutually in alignment for everything our prospects and our customers need, from the very beginning to the very end, right? So what that means in practice is, I'm going to, use an upfront contract, and hey, this is what we're going to cover today, and this is the projected outcome for the first conversation we have. Does that work for you? Right. And then continually doing that throughout the entire, life cycle and the entire conversation that you're having with an individual, or group of individuals. So I think at the end of the day, it's very easy, especially when things are going good, to assume that you're landing value, assume that, your prospect is on the same page as you. But every time, I know for me, every time that I have assumed too much, I'm assuming incorrectly, right? And so it's always really important to confirm that, as you look to make sure that you're delivering value in the right way.
Oh, that's fantastic, Mike. So, in fact, I think the broad few points that I picked up was one, of course, truly become a trusted advisor as a salesperson, and genuinely add value, understand what they are going to be able to achieve by using your platform, using your software, or using your service at the end of the day, and really demonstrate it also through social proof, right? And very clearly articulate that it's not just not me, but look at what the market is saying. So I think some great points there, Mike. Diving into some of the specifics, right? And obviously, some of these basics that we need to get back to are very clear. But also with the whole macro that we are, currently undergoing, and just the entire way things are being bought is kind of changing. The personas that are getting involved are changing. There's also obviously sales cycle that's getting elongated. So with this kind of a situation, and obviously in most cases there's also multiple vendors in a specific segment in a market. So there's lots of competition going after like the same pie. So in this context and with this macro, what would you suggest as some of the specifics that reps and leaders should do to navigate this?
Oh, there's no doubt about it, Siva. I think it's kind of funny. I think it's very equivalent to what we felt in 2020 to 2021, and it starts to get easier. If you're not in a saturated market right now, you have to really make sure that you're not building bad habits, because the competition is coming. It's just a matter of time. And I know there's a variety of some of my colleagues and people that I have in my network that have rode that wave of maybe not having a ton of competition. And it definitely doesn't last forever. And adjusting to that is not a joke, right? Especially in today's day and age. And so if you're not in an oversaturated market, prepare for one, because it happens. Especially if you're doing something right, your competitors are going to come. And at the end of the day, it's a good thing. But I think number one, always kind of comes back to focus on relationships, right? Especially in an oversaturated market, I think it's very common that feature functionality is consistent, right? If not across every player, across, two or three, right? The saying of people buy from people they like sounds cliche, but it's true, right? And I think to dive into that in more detail, it's if you're able to get somebody to open up with you, they're going to be able to explain to you how they're perceiving all of those features and functions that could be looked at as exactly the same, as well as objections that they have, differentiators that your competitors might have that you don't. And it simply allows them to be more open with you, so you can have an honest conversation with what is the reality, right? I think a lot of times, if you're not able to build that relationship strongly up front, then you're not able to have those real conversations, and ultimately your deals are going to stall as a result, right? And so I think doing your research on not just the company that you're speaking with, but the prospect, right? One of the big things that I think is really important in today's day and age is, you're going to have to go wide and deep, in sales cycles today, right? You need more stakeholders than arguably ever you've ever had to. As well as you're going to have to go all the way up a lot of times, where maybe a couple years ago you didn't have to go all the way to the CFO or the CEO. More times than not, you're going to have to do that. And I think a lot of times it's very easy for individuals to get on those group meetings where there's multiple stakeholders on and just do a presentation and not tie it specifically to what each individual that you're meeting with wants to see. Right. And when you really think about the concept of that, what a mistake that is, right? You have to collect champions throughout the entire sales cycle. And how you do that is building relationships and tying back what they care about to what you're talking about. And everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be heard, and everybody wants to be taken seriously. And oftentimes, if you're just, got a 30-minute presentation with 10 people, you just do your presentation and hope that it works. And oftentimes it's not going to, right? So I think that's very, very important. And then, one of the big things that I'm very, very lucky that we have at Everstage is how we can recession-proof our pitch, right? And recession-proof our product. And I think there's four kind of key items when you think about recession-proofing what you're doing. And with Everstage, it's a constant effort with product, our executive team, our marketing team, our solutions team, our sales team, our BDR team, the entire gamut, right? And so these four items is, one, how do you help reduce spends or generate a tangible ROI, right? again, in today's day and age, that bottom line really matters, right? So I'm either helping you save money or I'm helping you make money. Just solving for a pain is not going to work, right? I think number two is, how do I help you do more with less? We've all seen the layoffs that have happened, and it's very unfortunate, but it's just the reality of the beast. And you can look at that as a negative, or you can try to find the positive in it and help organizations do more with less than they absolutely have less. I think the third thing is, how do you help mitigate risk, right? There's a ton of risk. I know one of the big things that we help a lot of our customers with is, payment errors, right? Commission payment errors that happen. And so we're genuinely not only helping them reduce spend because they might be overspending, but we're also helping them mitigate risk of the trust that can be lost if you miscalculate how you're paying your people, right? It's a huge aspect. And then I think the last thing is, can you help consolidate either technologies, systems, processes, or teams, right? And so when you really think about how can you make sure that your company continues to see growth, and that you're really, I think even more importantly, delivering value for your prospects, is make sure that you're recession proofing your entire offering and ultimately your pitch, right? So I think that's monumentally important. And Everstage is I'm very lucky to be a part of Everstage, because we have very strong handles for all of those things. We can genuinely help folks with all of those things. And then, I also think, just how you engage with prospects and customers has to be smarter, right? I think, marketing and, advertising is a really, a significant leading indicator of just how you have to communicate with people overall, right? I can be talking about how I want a Peloton, and I will see an ad of a Peloton up on my phone the next time I'm on social media, right? And so you have to really kind of be cognizant that people and the psychology of people need to be met when their intent is at the highest. And you can't always just power your way through that like maybe you've been able to in the past. And so I think leveraging technology to understand how your prospects are engaging with content, when they're engaging with content and with your outreach, and meeting them there is monumentally important, right? I think another thing is actually providing really valuable content, right? And have it be very relevant. I think every salesperson will tell you that they always want to push their marketing teams to create more case studies and testimonials and things of that nature, and that's all good and well. But I think how you deliver that is probably just as important, right? And I think you have to think outside of the box. So, non-traditional mediums outside of email, like LinkedIn posts and social media connections and things of that nature, targeting advertising, but following it along with your funnel. I think all of those things are very, very important, and just has to be continuously improved upon if you want to, stick out across, your competitors, right? And then I'd say the last two things are, one, you really have to like offer solutions, not just products, right? I think one of the big things that I talked about a little bit earlier was that everybody has a product, right? Products don't just solve problems themselves, right? You have to help your prospects and your customers tie those two things together. And if you're really genuinely positioning yourself as a partner, not just a vendor, I think it's a lot easier for you to present a solution, not just this is how our technology works, right? This is how it's actually going to help you, and what does that actually mean for you? And then I'd say the last point that comes to mind off of that question is you have to adjust your offering to stay updated with the times, right? So, for example, maybe that means discounting a little bit deeper than what you've done in the past. Maybe that means looking at the lengths of your agreements and adjusting there, right? And I think really working with your business to understand what those need to look like is very important. But probably even more important is, once you've established those, how can you make sure that the behaviors you want your team to have to drive those new changes are actually being followed up on, delivered, and ultimately close the loop on, right? That's one of the big things that we do with our offering is, we have the ability to help kind of forecast what sales will look like if changes to our sales process get made, right? So for example, say a customer of ours wants to discount less, right? Our technology and our offering will allow them to see what that will look like if I discounted less in their actual pocket, in the salesperson's pocket with the commissions that they make, right? And that actually drives significant behavior change that helps the business and helps your people. And so I think really investing in making sure you're speaking their language to help drive that behavior is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mike. And I think I really loved, what you talked about, especially on recession proofing your pitch. I think, as all of us are going through the slowdown, I think that's super important to understand, what's that value that each of, the solutions that you're offering has in really making sure it's recession proof, right? And sometimes you have to, brainstorm and articulate that, because maybe in 2021 and 2022 that was not how you pitched the product, but maybe there's a way how to actually position the product that way or the solution that way, right? And that's where I think the other point that you also mentioned clearly makes sense. Delivering value or solutions, not just products, because at the end of the day, I think there was this term which came up like 20 years back. It was starting to become, it was really nascent, only focused on enterprise businesses, what people used to call as value engineering.
Yeah.
I mean, and so essentially, that's what everyone, doesn't matter if you're selling enterprise, doesn't matter if you're selling mid-market or SMB, what's the value that you're able to deliver, and clearly articulating that value and quantifying the value in terms of either cost saved or, revenue gained, right? So really making it clear. And also at some point, as what Mike was mentioning, you have some of your champions and stakeholders, but then they are also going to go and influence some of the other budget holders inside. And so how do you equip some of these champions to be able to go and deliver the message the way you want them to deliver is also super important as part of the value engineering, is what I feel.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think with that, it all kind of starts and stops with, did I create a good relationship to where I can understand how they are seeing my value? Because you're not going to be able to just tell a prospect, hey, when you go speak with your boss, I want you to say this, this, and this. They're going to speak what's in their mind. And how you can actually help influence that is by genuinely understanding how they're thinking about it, and maybe planting seeds of, hey, you might want to think about it like this, or you might want to think about it like that. But let them have the core, and you'll help shape it. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, when champions are going having those conversations, I can guarantee you it's not going to be your pitch. It's going to be their language that they're speaking, and having a good relationship will help understand how you can help with that language.
Absolutely, mate. And I think I do recognize, we do have, a bunch of sales leaders and, folks who are heading teams, joining this conversation. So, kind of getting to the segue into, how do you have, we describe over some of the things that, each of us as sales executives have to do, but ultimately as leaders, how do you drive this behavior? How do you drive that winning culture across your teams in this tough landscape?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. This is something I'm super passionate about. I think, why people get into sales in general. It could be a lot of things. They are very money driven. They are competitive. But I think the foundation that you'll see across all of them is that they like to win, right? they value winning, and they, maybe even more importantly, hate losing, right? And so I think that really, really starts with your culture, and really starts with leaders. One of the, the core concepts that I like to hold myself to, and that I'm a big fan of, is extreme ownership, right? There's no bad teams. There's only bad leaders, and creating that winning culture falls solely on you. And if you have that, embedded in your team, and they are embodying that, they're in control of their own destiny, and you're in control of your own destiny, and you're living it, I think that's foundationally number one, right? But I think for everybody, it's, what are your core values? How can you clearly communicate them, and be really transparent in what they are and how we're performing against them, right? I think the consistency of how you do that and how clearly you do that can really help you build a strong, one, company culture, but probably even more importantly, trust, right? I know one of the things that we really help our customers with is trust, right? Trust for salespeople that they're getting paid the right amounts, and trust from finance teams that RevOps is calculating the commissions correctly, and that trust we really want to live internally, right? How can we trust in our process and in ourselves so that we can portray how much that our prospects and our customers can trust in their own organizations with what we're providing, right? So really living it, really clearly articulating it, and how that can trickle into not just your internal team, but also the people that you're helping, right? The customers that you're helping. Um, I think another thing that comes to mind with this is managing expectations, right? I recently joined the team at Everstage at the beginning of the year, and it was one of the first things that I brought to Siva was, I'm a big expectations guy, and I want to get very, very detailed with what my expectations are for myself, what they are for my people, and what you have for me, right? I think it's very easy for issues to go from being non-existent to blown out of proportion simply because expectations weren't managed, right? For example, say I expect that I'm going to get lunch every day when I come to the office, but I only get lunch once a week. That would, can make somebody frustrated. Think if I didn't think I didn't expect to get lunch at all, and I got lunch once a week. Now I would be actually excited about that, right? And it's a very simple expectation management, scenario, right? And so I think, to create a winning culture, everybody needs to understand what the company's goals are, what is expected of them, and make sure those goals and expectations are very clear, very measurable, very achievable. And also, I think as leaders, you have to live that, right? You have to lead by example with those expectations. As I, roll out my expectations with my team, the first thing is that I'm 1,000% going to hold myself accountable to these expectations, and I want you to hold me in check if I don't. Right? This is not a one-way street. This is very much so a group effort when it comes to having a winning culture and having everyone be a part of it. And so I think that's very, very important. I also think it's when you think about leading by example, one of the things, especially as leaders, I see a lot of people make mistakes with, but it's being vulnerable, right? I think you genuinely have to care about your people, and you have to understand, especially in today's day and age, that like not everybody is perfect, and the mental health that you have, that your people have, has to be invested in and has to be something that you are very cognizant of, right? And so one of the things that I really strive to do is I try to explain to my team when I think I made a mistake on in a call, or if I'm going through a challenge in my personal life, like I want them to know that it's okay to share that, because ultimately I want to help them if they're going through something. And it starts with me, right? I certainly don't want to set any expectation that I am some perfect individual that can improve and that doesn't go through challenges, because I know nobody is, right? And I know it, if I can invest in my vulnerability, that will allow my team to be more open with me, and then we can really work on improving together. And that winning culture completely gets killed if your team is not comfortable with where they're at and who they work with and who they work for, right? It really is really, really important. And I think a lot of times I see leaders make mistakes where they think they have to act a certain way in order to lead. And I think being vulnerable is something that often gets overlooked, but you really can't. I think another thing is you genuinely have to uh, not just find the cracks with your team and with your process, but really ultimately understand in a real way of how to fill those cracks, right? So, I know, one thing that is an example of this is, and I'm sure every sales leader that's on this call deals with this. And if they don't think they do, I can guarantee you go ask your team, they're going to tell you that they're doing this, is shadow accounting, right? I think every rep, as they're looking at the deals that they're getting ready to close, or their paycheck's about to hit, or they just get their paycheck, they're going back to an Excel sheet and they're double checking to make sure those commissions are calculated correctly, right? And when you think about that, the concept of needing people to do that, or those, your employees needing to feel like they have to do that, can have an eroding factor in how much they trust the organization and trust who they're working with and working for, right? And so it's a big thing that, one, Everstage helps, solve for, but oftentimes gets overlooked, right? And if you're not managing expectations that you're going to get paid correctly, a lot of times those issues happen, they fester, underneath the surface for an individual. And then next thing you know, that they leave, right? And you can lose really good people from, those issues not being addressed, and, you not being able to fill those small cracks that maybe don't seem like big deals, in the moment, but ultimately over time really become a crater versus a crack, right? And so I think that's, just super, super important. And then, I think, another item here is just recognizing and rewarding success. I think it's really easy for everybody to just hit the gong when deals close. But for me, I really try to recognize the small wins, right? Really make sure that the my people and my team value the journey, right? And find joy on the journey. I think every salesperson knows that if you're winning 10% of the time, you're a Hall of Famer, right? You are the best of the best, right? You're going to lose a lot. And so if I'm not only focusing on that end result, I'm going to drive myself crazy. And so you need to really make sure that you recognize and reward those small wins, especially throughout your sales process, because one, small wins added up will typically lead to big wins. But two, if you're helping create a positive environment by, acknowledging those small wins, positivity leads to more positivity, right? The mantra that when it rains, it pours is real in both positive and negative, right? I think we've all been there where, when things aren't going good, it just, things compile on each other. And when things are going good, it seems like you can't miss. And so how can you acknowledge that that's a real thing and try to create that positive momentum yourself? It's, by understanding and recognizing those small wins. And then I think that applies obviously to like your pipeline and the sales execution that you're doing, but you also have to think about, your people and recognize rewards and success on a personal level, right? If you're not investing in your people inside and outside of work, there's no way you're going to be able to create a winning culture, right? And I say the last thing that I would say is you have to hire the right people, right? I think building a winning culture starts with the people that you hire. I think any leader that would tell you otherwise is missing the mark. And you have to identify, understand what you want your culture to be, and then you have to find and identify and invest in the types of candidates and people that share those values and have those skills, and ultimately that can be successful, right? And so hiring the right people, retaining the right people, investing in those people, and really looking for those sticky moments is really important. So probably the most important thing out of all of that is finding the right people and keeping them.
Absolutely, Mike. Yeah, and I think some of the points that you mentioned, especially around leading by example, and also setting that expectation very clear, right? I think it's super important because I think baselines quickly change, right? Again, going back to the heydays of 21, when things were going right, everything seemed possible, and uh, expectations were set in a certain way of what growth meant, what even personal growth for your people meant, for that matter, right? It's just not just company growth. And then obviously when things are a lot more difficult, what do you set as the right expectations? What do you do to clearly establish how you think of good performance, and but at the same time really leading by example and showcasing what you really mean by all of this. And I think just having seen some of that closely, I think Mike, you did a great job in terms of putting together all of that, expectation setting, with the team that you had. So I think that's a great thought, to leave some of our audience with. So quickly, I think as we get to the end of the session, if there were a couple of points that you want to leave the sales leaders and sales teams with, specifically considering the environment that we're in terms of what you would do for the market, what you would do for the team, what would those be?
Yeah, so I think it's, not a surprise. It's invest in relationships, right? Genuinely understand how you can help somebody, clearly articulate it, and get them to a point to where they feel open with speaking in their real voice, right? Really, look to you as somebody that can genuinely help them through the relationship that you've created. I'd say that's number one. Number two is that recession proof of your offering, right? I think the reality of it, if you're not helping make money, helping save money, helping do more with less, you're gonna run into challenges, and so really invest in that and really embody that, because I think a lot of organizations, foundationally are set up to do that, but are they articulating it through their sales process is the challenge, right? And then the last thing I think is, hire, retain the right type of people, but be vulnerable, set expectations correctly, and embody, what you want out of your team, and it all starts with you. I'd say would be the last thing I'd leave the our session with.
Absolutely, Mike. And I think just some of the things that you mentioned around decision proofing, as well as broadly around the team building. I think those were great examples that you really shared. And also, I think one thought that broadly, I also felt was at the end of the day, it is also a great opportunity for all of us, right? Like to really, improve ourselves, our skill sets, our whole salesmanship, our craftsmanship around how we do the whole process, our relationship building, as well as ensuring that we're able to scale further from a career standpoint. So those were great points. I think we do have some questions, and I think there's one of this question from Jay. I think Jay has this question on what's your process for improving sales skills? Like, is there any I'm presuming what Jay means is, any specific resources or tactics that you would advise for improving sales skills.
Absolutely. I could speak for another 5 hours on this topic, right? But I think the most important aspects of this is using real life scenarios, right? So call recordings, on call actual coaching, delivering that in a timely manner, right? So taking the time that after a call to debrief and give coaching about that in real time. I'd say the second point of this is clearly articulate and mutually connect with your people on what skill that they are at and what needs to be done in order to improve, and put a timeline on, from this week to next week, I want you working on this and I want to see it in your calls, and then we'll go back and we'll review it together and we'll be on the same page about how we actually improve that skill or that topic, right? And then again, is be vulnerable and be real with how you are performing on those same items, right? If I am giving coaching on a given topic, I need to make sure that if I don't do that 100% accurately how I would want it, that I tell my person, hey, I made this mistake, this is what I wish I would have done better. And using those real life scenarios and being vulnerable allows it to be a lot more sticky. So those would be the things that I really think are important when it comes to delivering coaching and improving sales skills.
Awesome. There's another question from Lara, and the question is, has your definition of winning changed for 2023?
No, not for me personally. I wouldn't say. I think ultimately, kind of like what I was talking about a little earlier, is that I think focusing on the small wins and actually improving every day and every scenario that you face, I've always considered that winning. So I don't think that necessarily has changed. I think it maybe has gotten highlighted a little bit more. And ultimately, revenue is king, right? I am a sales leader through and through. And, those small wins are how we build up to the big wins. But the definition of winning is closing deals, bringing in revenue, seeing growth, retaining, your customers. And that has been the case for a long time for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably it's also a kind of a philosophical question, right? In the sense that, you know, uh, you are driven by your own aspirations and what you want to achieve. And so, in some sense, winning doesn't change for you. You know what you want to do. At the end of the day, market can be good, market can be bad sometime. But at the end of the day, what you need to do, what you want to achieve, all is very personal. And at the end of the day, that's really what also transforms into career and sales and leadership.
Most definitely. I think if you've been in sales long enough, you have faced every challenge that uh a recession or a pandemic can bring you, right? And so you never get too comfortable. And you're always ready for uh how can I present value in a way where people won't have budget, they don't understand why they would need this, so I need to evangelize the channel. And all of those things I think have been embedded in me for a long time, and so winning looks the same because I've already been scarred enough throughout my career to know what it needs to be.
Absolutely, Mike. And I think probably last thoughts from my end would be really to say, hey, everything will pass. For people who've been around long enough, as Mike said, this is one phase of something that anyways is a cycle that keeps coming and going. And at the end of the day, it's a great opportunity to refine our skill sets and really get better at what we do, which means that when the good times start to come again, you're just so much more better, much more competitive, and able to really ride that wave much better. So perfect. I think thanks again, Mike. I think this was great. Really appreciate you spending time and sharing some of your personal experiences, and hopefully, it was valuable to the audience. I'll give it over to Eduardo to the closing wrap.
Thank you so much, both of you. The conversation was really, really good. I'm pretty sure the audience is ready to go win in 2023 after all the tips. We're going to wrap things up here, but first I want to thank everyone for attending. Attendees, you are the best part of MSP. We love having you here. And thank you to our wonderful Everstage. You can request a demo from Everstage by clicking in the button right here in the top of this page. Request a demo with our sponsor, and their team members will make sure to contact you later today. And also, thank you, Mike and Siva, for the amazing content and all the knowledge that you gave us today. While the speakers and I hang out backstage, the MSP team will make sure that the recording is available in our website shortly, and you audience will receive a follow-up email with the link so you can check everything again and see some key takeaways from this conversation. So speakers, we can go hang out backstage, and audience, I will see you next time. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.